What's up, Matt?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. So we're hanging out at my house and doing a podcast. So
Thanks for letting me come over.
anytime, anytime. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. There's like the Utah contingent of data people. You're one of them, I guess, and I am. Who else is here? Jordan Morrow actually lives up in your neck of the woods. Do you know him?
I know him virtually. We've never synced up in person.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. So
I thought he was down south, but
yeah, well, yeah. There's a big contingent of data people here apparently. So, but yeah, I think we wanted to talk about book writing, all that fun stuff. So, I guess for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
sure. Yeah, I like to say that I sell snake oil and teach people to tell lies with data, but I spend a good deal of my time doing corporate training, so going to large companies and help them level up their Python skills and data skills. When I'm not doing that, I'm doing some consulting and I guess content creation.
It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I think we met back over 10 years ago at, what was it, SLC Python?
Mm-hmm.
I think you were doing a Python meetup before that, right?
Yeah, so SLC Python kind of stole the other Python, but that's okay. We won't hold that against them. We were running a Python group and it was meeting up at the U, and then the other person wanted to meet out further down south. And yeah, and there ended up being a split in the Python group, but it's okay.
No, I was the one that helped start the SLC Python group. I think Ferris and I started it because it was, we didn't want to drive down to Lehigh, I think.
Exactly. And we were like, well, we used to be at the U, and then we moved down to Lehigh. But anyway, there was talk of a merger, and people said they didn't want to merge, and I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's kind of funny though. I think both the trajectory of our careers. I think we both kind of outgrown the local meetup scene. Anyway, it's just a lot of work.
Yeah, I would say run it. I would say that there's value in a meetup. Running it is a lot of work, and I would definitely encourage folks who are beginning their career, or even just maybe feel pigeonholed or stuck in a place, to reach out to others and network with other people sort of outside of their normal network. And I think meetups are a great place to do that.
Yeah.
And sadly, with COVID, kind of a monkey wrench got thrown into that. A lot of these things moved on to virtual. And while virtual is great and allows people from all over to join, I think there is a lot to be said from having someone talking to them in their face, especially I think for people who are like looking to maybe get a job or get a different job or network from that point of view. I think meeting someone that way can be super valuable. That I think that's very hard to replicate virtually.
It is. Because I know for SLC Python, like it sort of went into hibernation during COVID, like a lot of meetups did. I also do the Utah Data Engineering meetup, and I think that one we kept going. But that was funny because I kind of quipped that it went from being the Utah Data Engineering meetup to like being the global data engineering meetup, because suddenly we're getting the people from all over the planet, like the creators of Presto and everybody. So, and then I think in some ways it helped put Utah on the map for data engineering, just because people were like, I didn't even know Utah existed. Like, what is this place? But now we're back to doing it in person, right? And so, but I think with meetups, it's interesting because getting guests to speak is certainly easier at a virtual meetup. But as you point out, the community aspect of it is definitely one of those things where you can't compare the two.
Yeah. Previously, like every meetup I've attended in person generally had we're going to start off with an introduction, right? Or people who've never been here before get to introduce themselves. And then we're also going to give time for sponsors or anyone who's hiring to speak. And we're also going to give time for anyone who's looking for a job to speak as well, right? So that's, I think, huge for people, like I said, early in their career or looking for a change that is really hard to replicate virtually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll see. I think we travel quite a bit these days, you and me both, and it's fun to go to other meetups around the country and around the world and just seeing like what people are up to. It's you come to realize the world's a very small place, and everyone has sort of the same issues they're tackling, whether it's finding a job, whether it's in your case like issues with Python, like like how do I do X, Y, or Z, right? I mean, walk me through that though. Were you always into being an educator, or what got you into this path of being an educator?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I actually did math tutoring. And so when I went to college, I did a lot more tutoring, and I would say, I guess, paid for my college with tutoring, right? It was like, you can go work as a janitor, or you can be a tutor, and depending on who you tutor for, make quite a bit more money. So that moved into tutoring, and I guess I've always been around education, and that like my mom is an educator, my mother-in-law is an educator, and I really liked the tutoring aspect of like seeing someone getting like a C or a D in math, and it's like, oh, if you do this, you'll get an A, right? And it was relatively easy to like help these people like who think they're not good at math or whatever, just like, oh, you just need to like practice these or learn how to like convert word problems into math equations, and then you'll get an A if you can do these skills. And so I guess as I moved into computer science and programming, that was always in the back of my mind of like looking at content and saying, what content would I want? Or coming across, as I was in college when I was tutoring, and so I was like, oh, I think I explained this pretty well, and I would be in a class, it's like, this professor did not explain this well at all, right? Or when I could tell that it like went over like 90% of people's heads. And so I guess from that point of view, I was always in the sort of, okay, I want to scratch my itch. I want to give the talk that I would want to have, and then that led into like, I want to write the book that I would want to have, sort of thing, which led into doing corporate training.
Yeah. And walk me through that though. You brought up an interesting thing, like explaining something well. What does it mean to explain something well?
I think one thing it means is to know your audience, and then know where you're going. And so if you don't know your audience, like you can, I think this is a thing that you see a lot, especially at conferences where you have the creator of so-and-so speaking or something like that, where a lot of times they're so involved in like the inner workings of this that they can't see through the forest through the trees.
Yeah.
And so they're talking about things that might be interesting to a small segment, but a lot of people are like, oh, the creator's here, I'm going to learn how to use this library. And the creator's like, I don't want to talk about that. And the creator might not even use the library, so to speak, right? They're like involved in the weeds. So I think knowing who you're teaching, who you're talking to, super important. I mean, another thing is like we're inundated with information these days, right? Even before chat came around, you can go to YouTube or the internet, and there's so much content out there for topics that people say information wants to be free, and everything should be free. And well, I mean, there's a ton of stuff for free on Python or data engineering or data science or analytics on YouTube, and you could spend many lifetimes watching that.
Oh yeah.
Right? So I think another key aspect of like someone who's a good teacher is they're going to take you down a path, which a lot of people don't know what path they need to be on. And so when you have people who are sort of picking and choosing from YouTube or blog posts or whatnot to like learn from, that can be useful, but a lot of times you'll have knowledge gaps because you just don't even know what you don't know, and you don't pay attention to that, so it gets skipped over because it's not even in your mind.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So I see some people trying to learn Python, for example, off of YouTube, but it's very, as you point out, there's not a path. It's like I can go find a video on list comprehensions, for example, and that's going to maybe satisfy one question I have. But knowing list comprehensions doesn't make you a proficient Pythonista, so to speak, right?
Most people would probably agree with that, yeah.
Yeah. So some people think they're an anti-pattern too, but we won't talk about that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's one of those things where I think, I've recently started doing courses as well, course creation, and it's one of these things that, I'd love to talk to you about this, but there's a story arc that you have to take the learner on, and it's not obvious, because I think the easy thing to do would be to be very prescriptive and just say, okay, so to learn Python, you need to know, classes and methods and all this other stuff, and in a very generic way, but that's maybe not how people, are. Maybe it's not the most effective way to teach it. 'Cause I think a lot of teaching tends to be very tactical, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, I go into big companies, and a lot of these people have had Python courses in the university, and you can tell by talking to them that they don't really know Python. I've gone into, like, for example, I've gone into a large company who's like, we have a bunch of Python programmers and we want you to do an intermediate class. I'm like, awesome, let's do it. And I went in there and I started talking to them, and I was like, let's just go have everyone introduce themselves, what their programming experience was. And while they're doing that, I switched out the slides from my intermediate Python class to my fundamentals of Python class. They didn't know that I switched them out, but I switched them out because it's like, these people will learn more getting the fundamentals than they will learning about generators and comprehension constructs and context managers, because they don't even know what the Python object model is. They don't know how, like, dunders work, what's going on behind the scenes in Python. And so I think there's there's probably, I mean, like, I'm biased, but I see a lot of people coming out of college who this is my cynical, sarcastic take, is that, like, the professor's been teaching computer science for 30 years, and the dean comes in and says, you need to stop teaching Pascal or Fortran. Okay, maybe they're teaching Java or C++. You need to stop teaching that and teach Python, because that's what everyone's doing. They're like, I've been teaching this for 20 years. I have tenure. That sounds like a lot of work. Okay, I guess I'll basically take my slides and, like, one-to-one mapping of Java or Fortran to Python. And you can do that, and you can teach programming that way, but you're not really teaching Python, you're teaching programming. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's a lot of information out there, and I think you need to have someone, it depends on what your path is, right? And a lot of these professors, their path is like, I'm going to teach some constructs of programming, and Python is a vehicle for that. But I think when people get out to industry and they start using Python, they're kind of at a loss, because they don't know why Python is slow, or they don't know, even how to, like, install packages, because that's not something that the slide deck covered. Right. That's a good point. I mean, so at the University of Utah, I teach advanced SQL for analytics, and the approach I always take is, it's what are you going to need to know in industry, right? That's like, everyone likes the class, and it's rated very high precisely because it's the stuff that I see people doing in the real world. And then the students will say, this is, like, one of the most useful courses I took. Not to pat myself on the back, but I am. But it's like, because I get a job and this is applicable, right? And I think you're absolutely right. So, I mean, it's just, I feel like you're doing the student a big disservice if you're not putting them into a situation where they understand, like, how this is actually going to be used in the real world. Maybe you will never be in the real world. Maybe you're just taking this class too for just to stuff some credits. I don't know, but it's. Yeah, my bent is, like, I want to teach towards practicality, right? And I think a lot of universities are like, we're teaching not for practitioners, we're teaching people how to be computer scientists if they want to go into academia, right? Yeah. And so I for a lot of professors, if you would ask them, I think that they would say, yeah, there's practical stuff, but that changes, and so we're going to teach the core stuff that hasn't changed in 50 years, and people can go get a PhD with this knowledge if they want to.
It definitely is the traditional course. Are your we'll talk about books in a bit, but are your books used at any universities?
They are. I know that there are some professors who have asked for like sample copies. I know that community college was using it. So, I mean, I guess like I do teach a course for Stanford where it's online learning, where that's like a suggested book. But cool. Yeah, I don't know explicitly like if you went to such and such class page that it's like, oh, this is required reading these days.
Interesting. Well, we'll see. I mean,
I talked to some people about that because I know some people who have books that are used for that, and their comment to me was like, well, if you're going to like go down that route where you're going to try and like force that, then that's a lot of, I guess, squeeze for potentially not much juice, so to speak. Like unless they're organically choosing your book.
Yeah,
getting a foot in the door is kind of a problem.
It's hard. Like my book is used in a ton of universities right now, but that's because there's not really any other data engineering book out there, right? Conversely, there's a ton of Python books, and plus professors at this point. I mean, Python's been around a lot longer, so I'm pretty sure if you've been teaching it, you have your own resources, so it's a bit different.
Yeah.
And but it is one of those things where I feel like just the university experience and textbooks, it's like a really high friction sort of thing. Like I've never solicited a college or a professor to use my book, just because I'm like, don't have time to do that.
Yeah, your book, I mean, has done awesome, and I think that you are riding a wave, and you also have a huge first mover advantage.
Yeah.
Which I would come out and say that that's an outlier, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
If you look at book sales or how books work in general, your book is the book that publishers want. And you can look at, my take on book publishers is they're basically like VCs, right?
Yeah.
Where VCs, their goal is to make money, and to make money, they know a lot of things are going to fail, but some things are not going to fail and are going to go to the moon, and that's how they're going to recover all their losses. And books are basically very similar to that.
Yeah.
Long tail behavior.
I definitely see that with the publishing industry. And I think it's an interesting one where I feel that, especially these days, like you built a platform for yourself, right? I built a platform for myself, and we have an audience. And when we work on our books, I think we're doing it in public in a lot of ways, right? And I feel like the traditional publishing angle with big publishers is, okay, so write the book, release it, and then you find out if people want it or not, which I think is a very backwards thing. So it's like, I think this notion that authors don't make money on books is somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy, where it's like if you aren't promoting it, because the publisher is probably not going to help you promote it, right? We worked with one publisher, mutual one, and a great publisher, but they aren't really going to help you market your book. That's on you. And then, and most authors don't market. And so what do you think is going to happen? You will not sell a book. That's the consequence of this.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. A lot of people say, I want to work with a publisher because they're going to market it. And the truth is they will, when it comes out, they'll write an email about it or do a push when it comes out. But after that, generally they're pretty hands off. And then at that point, who's pushing the book, right? And if no one is pushing the book, then you won't sell unless there's something that's pulling it to it. But yeah, generally, if you look at most successful books, there is a platform behind it. Or there are some that I guess could go viral. I would say that there are some book authors I know who have very successful books and don't do a lot of publicity or pushing of that book. But I would say that the book went viral, and because it went viral or initially did very well, a lot of these things, once you kick in that flywheel, it can continue to operate.
Yeah, if I look at like Amazon's top books in tech, for example, I think it seems like quite a few of them are actually self-published, for example, right? Like yours does really well, and I think you self-publish. Nick Singh's the other guy, AC Data Science Interview, and he's killing it with that book, absolutely slaying. And then I look at books with publishers, and most of them aren't even cracking the top 100,000 in Amazon books, so it's sort of the null hypothesis of a publisher is going to help me with my book. I'm like, well, I mean, they'll help you publish it.
For some definition of help, right? And I don't mean to say that like no one should use a publisher, right? Everyone's going to write a book for their own reasons, and they should determine what those are. And the general advice is that, if you're going to write a book, you need to determine why that is. And to your point, like most books aren't selling, so the general advice is don't write a book for the money, so to speak. But I think that is correct in that, like, if you went, and books kind of do, I mean, publishers kind of do this too. They do say, like, write this business plan. If you do a book proposal, you kind of make a business plan for the book, right? And it's basically like, what's the competition? What other books are out there? Why is this book needed now? And who's the target audience for that, right? And so theoretically, based on that, if these proposals do their job, they should be able to know if a book's going to work or not, right? But you can take a book and look at, I mean, if you go to Amazon, you can look at the ranking of a book, and you can divine from the ranking how a book is selling and how it's doing. And I can look at a book and immediately say, like, this book is not selling, right? And from what the royalties are that this person's not making much money on this book,
right?
Based on that. I mean, you can divine. Very trivial to divine all this from looking at an Amazon rank.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's an interesting one, because I feel like you writing a book or me writing a book, like we're in the field. And I think in a weird way, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because we write the book, we sort of know who the audience is. And I think we have a pretty good idea of how it's going to land, right? Like I consider you like the first and foremost Python author in the world. It's like what you do is like you are the Python author, right? And so, and you almost have a sixth sense about, okay, I think this topic is really going to work, right? Like Effective Pandas, for example, like that. I mean, walk me through, like, how did you come up with that idea? It killed it when it came out. So Effective Pandas is, going back on my background. So out of school, after I got my CS degree, one of my jobs was working to do business intelligence. And so this is back in 2005. We wrote this business intelligence application on top of SQL and with Python, and it was kind of a pain. And it's like, okay, you can use like Crystal reports, or you can use give me PTSD here.
Oracle Discoverer tool or whatever. And the company that we were working with was like, no, we don't want that. We kind of want this bespoke tool that people who don't have to be database people folks to use. Anyway, we wrote that, and my takeaway from that is that later on I saw Pandas. I saw Wes talk about Pandas at PyCon, and I'm like, okay, this actually looks interesting, because this is very similar to what I just implemented. And so I kind of jumped on Pandas after that, because I'm like, this is super useful. As a Python person, I'm like, I prefer to write Python instead of SQL. I get that might be bad for a lot of people, but there are pros and cons to that. And so, long story short, I wrote a book about Pandas, and then I started doing a lot more corporate training on Pandas. and I came and doing some consulting on it, and I came to have some really strong opinions on it. And so I was like, okay, my first book, I mean, it was okay, but it's like, I now have like this really strong opinion, and I want to like share this with the world.
Was that book in 2016? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I reviewed it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yep.
Yeah. And it started out like I was just sort of tweaking that book and like, okay, some new features of Pandas came out, and I'm like, no, I'm just gonna like rewrite this, and I have like my thesis about like what I want to teach to Pandas, and I guess the book had some things that, I mean, the big one is just this notion of chaining code in Pandas that kind of sends people, it sort of splits people up. And you know, in marketing, there's this idea that like any publicity is good publicity. And so I would post snippets of code from that book, and people would like freak out because they're like, I would never hire the person who wrote this code. I would immediately like reject this PR, blah, blah, blah. And then you'd have people on the other end who are like, oh, once I started doing this, it like changed the way I wrote code. Our code is so much easier. We can debug it. We can deploy it faster, blah, blah, blah. And so that kind of fed into itself and brought people back to the book. And so it's just, after that, it's just been like, okay, I've got a Pandas snippet. I'm going to post that on social media with some commentary about it, and sort of rinse and repeat. The same thing happens. People are like, oh, I hate this code. This is horrible. And other people are like, no, I love it. And then it's like, oh, where can I find out more about this? You can go check out.
I think I remember some of those posts.
Yeah, they're yeah. I mean, really like, yeah, on the internet. And this is another thing that you need to be aware of if you're an author, is that if you put something out on the internet, you just need to be ready to, like, even on Amazon, if you read your Amazon reviews, that if you are a sensitive person, you will get your feelings hurt. And
oh yeah.
And so you just need to be prepared for that. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that like, oh, I mean, a book is like your baby. You spend your weekends and your nights working on it, and then you put it out there and people just tear it apart.
Oh, they do. Oh, they do. It was Bill Inman was telling me once, I think he's written over 67 books or something like that. But the best advice he gave me about book writing was, you know, expect about 5 to 10% of people just to hate you, not just your book, but you. And that's just how it is, right?
Yep.
I mean, and so during the review, I don't know what you do, but I know when we were writing the book, we had to get a team of technical reviewers, and I got just the most curmudgeon-y, cranky people I could find who were just going to beat the living shit out of this book, because it's like, at that point, if you can get past this person or this group of people, you're fine. It's like going through the alleyway at night, well, you know, walking past a gang. You know, if they give you the nod, you're probably going to be fine. But even then, you see idiotic comments and people ripping it apart no matter what. I mean, I remember one comment on Amazon was, this book is not about data science. It's about data architecture and engineering. It's like, it's clearly in the title, dumbass. But just some people, I don't know. It's the craziest thing. Yeah. What were some of like what's some of the weirdest feedback you've gotten on your books?
I mean, probably the one that annoyed me the most was when someone pirated my book, and then my worst review was on the pirated version of my book.
That sucks. What happened there?
So what happened with this was Effective Pandas, and so my strategy and this is kind of how I've been operating for the past while on my self-published stuff, is that I want to own my platform, because I don't know what Elon's going to do to Twitter, if it's going to burn down or keep smoldering, or same thing. I mean, we were talking before this about people getting kicked off of LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
And so that is a threat, right? If your audience is in one place, if it's on Twitter, and I've got a pretty good Twitter following. My LinkedIn's not as big as yours, but it's decent, and a lot of
my LinkedIn's not as big as your Twitter. You got like 150,000 Twitter followers, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
But that's a threat if those are going to get kicked out. So I want to suck people into my platform, right? So I have a mailing list, and my strategy for books is okay. Well, if I have a platform and I can push digital product, I would prefer to do that on my platform. And there's financial benefits for doing that as far as like royalty rates. But I also realize that like people like physical books, and I like physical books, and one of the reasons in addition to like teaching something, one of the reasons I write a book is like, this is the book that I would want to have to like have a reference, right? And I have like my Pandas book here, and I pull it out, but it's all marked up. Right, and it's like
that's the Matt Harrison copy.
Yeah, that's.
Sorry, this is audio, but Matt just gave me his Effective Pandas book, and it is full of Post-it notes here. He's got iLock, all this fun stuff annotated. And why do you do this? You wrote the book. Like, why do you still have to annotate this?
Yeah, so that's like notes on like things I want to change or updates or.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so. But I also like the index, and I want to go in and I want to like, a lot of times I prefer to like look something up in my book rather than look it up on Google. Even though I wrote it, it's like I need to look something up, and so So I like physical books, long story short, but I don't want to I don't want to print physical books. I don't want to have 1,000 of them in my garage.
I
don't want to do fulfillment of that, right? And Amazon gives you a platform for doing that. So my basic strategy has been like, I'm going to basically push Amazon and push my physical book to Amazon, and I'll handle the digital stuff.
Why don't you do Kindle?
Sort of same thing, right? And this is where that review came from. So Kindle, if you're self-published on Kindle, you get 70% royalty for pricing between $3 and $10.
Yeah.
So Kindle is basically forcing people to write novels, and if you write a novel, that's like the price point of a novel. That's a good royalty rate for that, right? So for novelists, that's like, yeah, I'll do that, right? For technical books where the audience is maybe smaller than that, generally technical books sell for a little bit more than that. But if you go outside that range, you're in a 30% royalty. So my take is that, okay, I'll sell you a Kindle book on my platform and get the royalty. So some enterprising soul took my digital book, converted it to a Kindle, and did a very poor job of it.
Oh no.
And then uploaded it to Amazon, and Amazon gladly linked it to my book.
Oh no. Was it that one book that had it was your cover but a different author name?
No, that was a different one.
No way, okay.
Yeah, that was a different one.
Wait, so they took your book, the Matt Harrison
They took my book, published it. It was published, and when you search for Effective Pandas, it says here's the physical book, here's the Kindle version, and if you clicked buy on the Kindle one, it would send this person the money for the Kindle version.
What?
Yeah, and I was like, Amazon, who is this? Can I get the money? I wrote this book, and they're like, no, you can't get the money.
What?
But you can send an email off to this email address, and we'll deal with it, sort of thing. And
Did they deal with it?
Yeah. Long story short, a week later, the book was down. But this person made. You can tell from the reviews or from the ratings. You can look at the sales of the Kindle version, and it's like, okay, this person made a couple $100 in a week, and Amazon just gave them that money, right? And it was linked. It looked like it was the official book. And the review was that like this book has horrible formatting because the person didn't know how to make a Kindle book.
That sucks. I have the same thing, right? I think maybe I showed you this, but there's my book here, and then there's
the same title.
Oh no, there's another one now. Crap. Oh no. Okay, so the listeners, there's actually a new book, this is brand new on Kindle Unlimited.
By
So
the
this
same
guy's,
person.
yeah, Dan Garfield. If you're Dan Garfield out there, please kindly fuck yourself.
Okay, cage match.
So,
Joe wants to do an Elon
Yeah.
Zuckerberg cage match with Dan
yeah,
Garfield.
this guy. I mean, okay. This is brand new. 3-in-1 guide for building the foundation for being a douchebag or something, I guess. But yeah, effective data management. Yeah, I mean, this kind of stuff here. But there are many other books like this out there, and the weirdest one that we saw was a week before our book was set to be released. There was a summary book of ours.
Okay.
And I looked at it.
So it's one of the tech reviewers got it, and
I don't know. Well, I downloaded a Kindle copy of it. And I was like, this is a robot wrote this. There's no way a human would write this badly.
okay.
And it was, but it was, so I looked at the publisher, and it was the same person had also done or same group, I don't know if it's a person, but they did a summary of Alex Jones' The Great Reset and all these other like fringe right-wing books, and then our book. I was like, this makes no sense whatsoever. But our publisher couldn't do anything about it because the title is not copyrightable, and so they're just like, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And
So yeah, there's a whole thing about piracy with books, which here's my take on that. Is like, I could spend all my time fighting pirates, and for me the most annoying thing is that Amazon like enabled like someone to like link to my book and like make it look legitimate. That's something that's just silly and is easily preventable. But like, still either doing a summary or straight up copying the content and giving it a different title and then putting it online. There's that, and then there's just people who will just take your content because they think that everything needs to be free. Which, whatever. I used Linux for 15 years on my laptop. I understand like the open source mentality there, but I also understand that like people who are doing this put a lot of time and effort into it, and I think they should be paid for that.
well, yeah, I mean, because you can look at books as two ways, right? And I mean, marketing is definitely one where it can open up a lot of doors for you. And like I think, as you point out in your course on book publishing, which is, you should go get it, audience. But it, you call it the business card, right? And so there's obviously the business card angle. But then there's authors like you and I who actually do make money off our books, and I think that's the cold reality. Is I think the big platforms definitely. It's total anarchy out there, because I mean Amazon's incentive is to make as much money as they can. They don't really care.
Yeah, the cynical side is that they're perversely incentivized to sell whatever. I mean, but my take is that like, okay, people are going to pirate. A lot of the people who are pirating are just collecting books because it's like, oh, I got a free book. I don't think you're ever going to sell to those people.
No, you aren't.
So I'm not super concerned with those. And the other thing, I guess, to like our benefit, yours and mine, is that because we have a platform, we can push people to our books. And even though like there's these pirated versions, again, you can look at the books and you can see how much they're selling or not. And a lot of them don't sell. The scary thing is, I mean, I've been doing the Amazon publishing since 2011. I do have books on Kindle in there, but people have been doing like robo reviews and that sort of thing, and or they would do things where you would basically pay people to buy your book and put it very low, and then you would have sales, and then those people could write reviews for your book. And so a lot of people who are like the uninitiated or who are just using Amazon as a search engine, at that point, if they come across one of these books where it's like, okay, this has a lot of reviews, it has a lot of sales, and someone's selling it for $5 instead of whatever the $40 that your book is, someone's going to say, okay, these cover the same things, I'm going to go for the cheaper one, right?
Yeah.
Which, especially if that's like stolen content, is super frustrating.
So what's it like publishing though? Because I mean, so you've worked with big publishers before, and then you decided to self-publish. Like, walk me through that process. Like, why would you self-publish, and then how do you self-publish?
Yeah. So again, I think everyone needs to, anyone who's writing a book needs to decide why they want to write a book. And I had self-published before I worked with publishers. I've worked with 2 different publishers, but have had talks with more than that. So you should decide, like, do I want to write a book? Why do I want to write a book? And again, to your point, like, you know, if you want to actually sell books, do you want to like invest the time in building the platform to sell the books? So working with a publisher, the general process, and this is probably similar to what you did, is you need to decide that you want to write a book. If you have some notoriety or attention, oftentimes publishers will come to you and ask you to write a book for them. If you're just getting started out, that's probably not going to happen. So what you'd want to do is write one of these book proposals, and you can go to their websites and they'll have a proposal. And it's basically, like I said, a business plan for your book. It's like, what are you talking about? How big is the market? What's the competition? Who's the target audience? And often they'll want you to write like a sample chapter or two of your book to see if you can actually write. If you happen to know an author and they can like connect you to someone who works with a publisher, that can be a good getting a foot in the door, so to speak. Rather than just, I mean, similar to networking or getting a job anywhere, right? If you have a connection to them, that can be certainly useful for folks doing that. And then, you know, after that, your publisher is going to come back and say, we like this or we don't. And if they like it, they're going to give you a contract. And if they don't like it, they'll just say, sorry, we're not going to do that. You know, once you have the contract signed, which basically depends on, you know, it could say a bunch of different things in there, but generally what they do is they say, we're going to give you a small amount of money as an advance, and then you're going to write the book, and then you'll earn royalties, and those will go against your advance. And then after that's paid off, then you'll get the royalties from that. The process of working with a publisher is generally the same, but your mileage may vary depending on which publisher you're working with. Generally, you know, you'll have this outline, and you know, you'll have an editor that you're working with. Some are more hands-on, some are less hands-on, and they'll come up with a schedule, or it's like, we want you to finish this book in 6 months or something, and they know that whatever schedule you have is probably going to be blown out, but because they're used to that. But they want, you know, having commitments, having something, you know, written is one way to a forcing function for people to do work.
Oh yeah.
And so you'll write a draft, and then generally a publisher will find people to review that. They might find technical reviewers to review that, or they might ask you to find them. And then they'll get feedback on that. There might be someone who goes over, you know, your wording or how you're phrasing things. I've found that generally they don't do too much of that. If you have like decent skills, that's more. Most of the feedback was more along the lines of like, this didn't flow, or this is confusing, or technical people just saying you need to do this instead of that, sort of thing. So you do some back and forth, and then you know, they might have some, in addition to tech reviewers, they might have like some early access, but generally the feedback from that is skimpy. And then after that, they're like, okay, we're going to get the final draft in. They send it off to someone else who will like clean up the images, possibly do some indexing to put the index in the back of the book, and then say, okay, now the book's kind of done, and you know, in a month or two it will come out physical, and maybe in a couple of weeks it will come out on digital. That's the process that I've been through when I've worked with publishers. Now let's assume that like you made this proposal, and you're like, I'm stoked on this book, I want to write this book, but they said, no, we don't want you to do that, right? And you're like, no, I know that whatever, this technology is going to be awesome. I know that there's a huge market here, or this is just inside of me and I need to get it out. I need to write this book. So, you know, just because a publisher rejected you doesn't mean that's the end of the world. You can go the self-publishing route. So the self-publishing route is basically like very similar to what you would do. You well, I would hope you would have some outline, and then you would start writing your chapters and fill that in. Hopefully you would get some feedback. You would get someone to go over it or multiple people to go over it. And then when it's in a state where you feel good about it, then you would want to get it into the versions you want. Like, do you want a digital version? Do you want a physical version? So that's some of the things that publishers tend to do for you, right? And those can be more or less of a pain. The issue is that what I've seen is that there aren't really good, I would say for most technical people, there isn't very good platforms to do that. People have sort of built up their own from scratch, but there isn't like one sort of like, this is the tool to use to do that. So like you could write a book, you know, if you want a physical book, you need to create a PDF of it with all the layout. And, you know, most technical people are going to be like, okay, I'm going to use like Word or LaTeX to do that, or someone might use InDesign. I would, like as a programmer, I wouldn't want to touch InDesign, and also Word is a huge pain. So my take is like, okay, I want to write LaTeX, but then I also want to write a digital book, right? And so LaTeX doesn't really work for digital books. So then you have to come up with how you make a digital book, which is basically a zipped up HTML file. And so once you've done that, once you've made a PDF and an ebook, if you want to sell that, you can sell that anywhere where you can sell digital goods, or you know, if you want to have Amazon sell that, you can upload both of those to Amazon, and then you click a button and wait a few days, and they approve it or deny it, and it goes on their site. And if it goes on their site, probably not much is going to happen when it goes on their site, unless you, you know, Amazon does have the ability to do ads now. Right, and and if you have something that's specific and unique that someone's searching for and there isn't anything else, then people might buy it. But if you know there's competition in there, it might be hard to do that sales. So again, that's where the platform comes in, where you would have to push things. And I will say this as well. One of the things that, because like you can look at Amazon, you can divine people's rankings and sales from that. I've had multiple publishers come to me after I self-published a book saying that they wanted to publish it, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's like, and you could probably do the reverse thing if you wanted to. If you really wanted a book with an animal on the cover or something, right? You really wanted to have a published book. You could, you know, if your book has done well, you could take that and you could say, hey, look, will you publish this?
Why would you want to do that though?
You know, people want their book for different reasons, right? And if like O'Reilly, if you have an O'Reilly book, they'll send you like a framed picture with the cover on it, right? Yeah. And people like to hang that in their office. And so that might be.
I have one in my office. You probably have one in your office.
Yeah. Yeah. So that can be a status symbol, right? That, you know, this isn't self-published. It's not just some vain thing, like it's a serious book and a serious publisher published it.
Right.
Right. You know, and so like you said, I do have this book authoring course, and in that course I interviewed 12 tech authors, right? And I wanted to get like a spread of people who had these are all writing technical books, but have different backgrounds, right? Why did you write your book?
Yeah.
And you know, some were self-published, some went with publishers, and some made more money, some made less money, right? And people wrote their books for different reasons.
If you're looking for another author to interview, by the way, I'm happy to chat.
Yeah. And so, you know, some people were just like, you know what, all I want to do, going, like taking self-publishing, going to a publisher, this probably wouldn't make sense, but like working with a publisher, some people are like, you know what, I just want to write. I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to worry about anything else, right? And yeah, if that's all you want to do, working with a publisher allows you to just focus on the writing,
which is perfectly fine, I would say, for most people. It's like it seemed. I mean, as I'm digging into the self-publishing, it's like it's a lot of work that you have to do. If you plan on doing more than one book, I think it makes a lot of sense. You just have the infrastructure.
It's a lot of work, but it's like, I mean, typically your royalties are going to be like 10%, somewhere around there.
If you go with the publisher.
With a publisher,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And so I guess the other side to look at is like, is my writing worth 10% of the book, right? Or doing these other activities?
Well, not just the writing, but now you get to market it too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and again, the people who are like saying, I just want to write, yeah, like you said, self-fulfilling prophecy. They'll write the book, and you know, if they don't put in the effort and they don't have virality or like a name, their book won't sell.
Right. Happens.
But they can write the book, right?
Well,
and some people have the book in them, and they're just like, okay, I wrote my book, I'm good, right? And
Yeah.
I'm fine because no one else makes money on books, so I'm fine with not making money on that.
Which, I mean, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? As we talked about, and it feels like with when I talk to I think aspiring authors, there is the goal of saying I'm a published author, right? And it feels like still, if you're self-publishing, it definitely feels like it's a bit of a hack. Like, well,
yeah, you weren't approved by, you don't have the rubber stamp.
Yeah, I don't have the rubber stamp. It's like getting a mail order diploma or something like that. Like, yeah, okay, good job. But I think if you are an established author and you do go off on your own, like you have your own imprint now. I mean, I'm working on having mine, and I think there's a lot of business sense to it. Because like, if you're close to the subject matter, like we are, like again, if you write a Python book, you know why this book needs to exist.
Yeah.
And you have the following where people are like, yes, I believe I need to write this book because Matt Harrison wrote it, and same with what I'm doing. I mean, we were talking earlier about a lot of my speaking tour right now. I'm not actually talking about the fundamentals of data engineering book. What I'm talking about is my new book. Mm-hmm. And I'm going out and in public really ideating.
Yeah, testing
the ideas, right? Because this is how, by the way, audience, this is how you make money on a book, is you get the buy-in from the public and and beat your ideas up in public, right? And then figure out what works and what doesn't. It's no different than a stand-up comedian going to some crappy club. I'm not saying where I speak is crappy, but keeping it a bit more low key.
Testing out
the ideas. Yeah, that's it. And then once you have something, you have a better idea of the story arc. You have a better idea of what topics are going to land and which you should just cut because nobody cares. But this is an overlooked thing because again, I think a lot of people want to just write a book monolithically. Like I'm going to go, off to the woods and write the great novel or the great American technical book. And it's hard enough to write a book, I would say. A publisher will give you the infrastructure, I would say, in a way that if all you want to do is write, get a publisher. Because I know when I'm working with O'Reilly, it was a world class. We had Nicole Taché, who was like the same editor for designing data-intensive applications and hands-on machine learning, two of their other biggest books, right? And it's like...
Yeah, Nicole's great.
Nicole's awesome, yeah. But if you want that infrastructure, go with the publisher.
Yeah. And I will also say, like, your mileage may vary on who you're working with at a publisher as well. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So I've had editors who have, like, bent over backwards to, like, do anything for me. And I've had other editors who are kind of like, well, you're just one of many people who I'm working with, and
mm-hmm.
and they give the appearance that they really don't care too much about you because they're so busy, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to be aware of. Yeah, if you just want to write a book, go with a publisher. But yeah, you're probably not going to sell a lot. Another nice thing about the self-publishing route is that, again, I do have a little bit more control over my books. And for me as a corporate trainer, I can go into a team and I can say, okay, we're going to talk about whatever, Python or Pandas, and then I can actually say, here, I brought books for people, right? And I can do that, which is kind of nice. A book can be a business card, but it can also be like, here's a nice little reference that goes hand in hand with my training as well.
That's cool. So how does that work then because you're self-publishing, do you have to like physically go to Amazon and then order those, or do they give you author copies, or how does that work?
Yeah, so for Amazon, you can order author copies, and they are significantly cheaper than what you'd get otherwise. The problem with that is that for whatever reason, they don't have Amazon Prime on that.
Oh.
So oftentimes ordering author copies, it's like a 3-week delay or something like that. So I have had times where I've been in a bind and it's like, oh, I need some copies. But
go to Prime.
Yeah, I'm just going to Prime them.
Well, and the dirty secret is...
I get some of that money back.
You get some of the money back.
And I'm boosting my ratings.
Yeah. But the dirty secret is, I'm not going to name names, but I know that a lot of the big tech publishers, they do print on demand. I'm almost certain that they're using KDP.
I will say this, like one of the tech publishers that I talked to was like, okay, we want to take your book in, and one of their selling points was like, we're going to use a different binding and this and that. But yeah, if you look at your books, most of them will have like this printing thing here. You can look at like, if your eyes are good enough, you can actually physically examine the books, and and you can tell how the quality is. They're all using the same machines to print them. I will say like this, the quality of like this, my XGBoost book, for whatever reason, like the printing on the inside is superb, and
it looks amazing.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's just because of the shape of that book that they send it off to a different place. You know, if you look in the back of the book, it generally says like, this is printed in North Carolina, or this was printed in this place. But
cover feels nice too.
Yeah,
I'm fondling his book, XGBoost, right now. I have to take it home with me. The cover feels very buttery. It's very nice, and then the pages are it just pops.
The color on that one, the printing on that one is very high quality. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, I would say that it's better than the Effective Pandas printing.
Yeah, and if I compare it to another book by a large brand name company, the paper feels okay, but compared to what you have, this stock it feels nice, right? Yeah. And if I compare it to this other publishing company here, who I won't name, this book feels and looks okay.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's very budget.
Yeah.
So, and I think we have kind of the gamut here. I mean, my house is full of books. That's pretty much the only thing holding it up at this point. So everyone sends me books now, and I buy a lot of books, and I read. That's pretty much all I do all day is just read. So, but in that process, you get to kind of get a feel for books. And I also do read a lot of Kindle books too, and you can kind of get an idea of like what a good book looks like. With this book, this Effective XGBoost is amazing. That's really good.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is like once, I went sort of down the rabbit hole when I started self-publishing. I read like elements of typography and you start seeing things and you pay attention to things when you craft your own book, right? When you're responsible for making your own Kindle or your own physical book. And when you look at other Kindle books or other physical books, you start like, oh, okay, they took a shortcut here. They didn't do this. Sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So walk the audience through. So say they go the self-publishing route, then what happens? So I'm gonna write the book. I'm gonna upload it. But how do I? This book looks awesome. But how much time did it take you to figure out? Okay, so I got to figure out the design for the cover. I got to figure out all the artwork and everything.
So all the artwork in that is, the code for the artwork in this is actually, most of it is in the book because this is the XGBoost book, and it's, some of this, the code is not in there, but this is like using graph.viz to make some flow charts in here. But most of these are just output from like XGBoost or plots that I've created. But for your book, you have like some diagrams, right? And you would need to like either outsource that or figure out how to use Illustrator or Inkscape or some other tool to create those probably. Certainly if you're not artistic, you can outsource that. you can work with Fiverr, you can find people in your network. Oftentimes, like I said, having a network is super useful, and you can find people in your network who can do that. Cover is super important. A lot of
Let me compare that to your pandas book real quick. So you have like a certain style of a cover, right?
Yeah, I've gone through various. So one of the things is like you can't judge a book by its cover, and so I would say like I like art, and it's at one point in time when I was in high school, I thought maybe I would go into art. And so, when I did my first books, I'm like, oh, I'll just do the cover by myself. And so I used Inkscape to do that. But you could use Illustrator or whatever. For like Amazon, you need to have a PDF of the interior, and you need to have a PDF of the cover, which is basically like the cover flattened out like this.
Oh, okay.
And so anything that can create a PDF, a single page PDF, you could make the cover up. So for Effective Panda, well, actually not for Effective Pandas, for my Python book before, I actually went to 99 Designs.
Oh yeah, remember them.
Yeah, and so you can pay a few $100s and basically make a competition, and so I did that. And the thing is with that is like once you say I like this certain style, everyone basically copies that style, right? So you get a bunch of basically derivative works from something, because people are like, if the person likes this, that's what they're going to choose. And these people, you've got like 50 people submitting ideas, and it's like a crapshoot for them, because it's like, I might not even get paid for doing this, right?
Right.
And then they're going to ask for like feedback, and they're going to like try and bend over backwards to like make you happy. But I did get someone who I liked what work came out with, which is like a general sort of layout for my cover. And I'm like, okay, I can sort of take this and I can kind of run with it, I think. And so I've adopted that. I think having something that, looks like it's technical, and there's certain things that like you've got some books here that if you saw those covers, you would, and you need to realize that like on Amazon, you're looking at something this big, right?
Yeah.
And so a cover, a book cover is actually very important, especially for self-published authors, right?
Oh yeah.
I can see, from other publishers, I kind of know, okay, this is from another publisher. But if I'm self-published, I would say, unless you're very artistic, I would probably recommend going down the route of hiring someone to do that.
Yep.
Again, you need to look at this as an investment, but that book cover can make a huge difference, and it's going to be a couple $100s to do that. So once you have the cover, you put the spine on, you put whatever you want on the back. You just need to leave a space for a USB, or not USB,
UPC.
UPC code. And then you upload it. Amazon sort of churns on that, and it's like, we approve it, or they can say like, oh, on page 300 you have something that's going out of the boundaries, and we'll like tell you what's going out, so you might need to tweak. If you're using LaTeX or InDesign or whatever, you might need to adjust the margins so things fall back in line. But that's the basic process. I mean, you can choose what size of book you want, what kind of, whether it's white paper or cream paper, whether it's color or not. Again, I'm not sure why like the quality of this XGBoost is so much better than this Effective Pandas one.
That is interesting.
They have the same setting. The only thing I can think of is that the size is slightly different, and I don't know if maybe there's a different machine that could do the different size. But then once you've done that, you fill in the prices, and you can fill in prices for different territories, and then you can say submit, and Amazon sort of does their magic thing and waits for 3 days, and I've never had them really reject a book straight up out of the top. I've had them reject books later for whatever reason, like after they've been published, but never.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. there's a lot of like, I don't know, mechanical turking going on behind the scenes that is kind of doesn't make sense, but stuff just happens there. But yeah, after you've got it up there, then they'll send you an email a few days later. It says it's published, and you could go and search for your book and find it there. One thing I've been doing recently, Amazon does have the ability to do ads now. And so I have been playing around a little bit with that, where putting in keywords and paying for keywords to point to my books. All of these platforms, Google, Facebook, Amazon, right? I mean, ads is another revenue stream, or the revenue stream for them. And so they want you to be successful with that. But I would say like it seems to work. And you can check on like how effective your ads are. I think my operating theory is like, I have my platform. I will send people on my email list like, hey, my new book's out. If you want the digital version, buy it here. If you want the physical version, go to Amazon. And so I figure I'm pushing a lot of those people directly to that. But Amazon is one of the largest search engines in the world, and it has people's credit cards connected to it. So if we can get some organic marketing, or people can find that organically, or through ads, that can be another boost on top of the sales there.
Yeah, I noticed Nick Singh, he does a lot of ads for his book. And talking to him, he makes terrific money off it, right? So it's definitely worth the investment. That's really interesting.
Yeah, you can. It's been said that again, going back to this poor author notion, but like you can treat your book like a business, right? And one part of a business is maybe the engineering, which you could say is like writing the book, right? But a company that just does engineering in and of itself isn't going to be successful, right? There needs to be like marketing and sales, and so again, who's going to do that? And my cynical take is like, a publisher will do a minimal amount of that.
Yep.
They'll mostly do fulfillment, but they will do very minimal marketing and sales. And so again, the onus is kind of on you. And a lot of publishers are like that as well, right? They reach out to you because they're like, hey, you have a big following, and you're smart, and so that's great because you'll sell the book for us, right?
Yeah. I remember one of the big publishers, they started sending their authors to me actually to learn how to market their book. And I said, you have to stop this. This is grossly unfair. Like, start making an effort to publish. Yeah, I thought it was a bit brazen. But it's one of those things where I think a lot of authors don't consider it either, right? I mean, it didn't occur to Matt Housley and I, when we were writing our book, until the book was out. And I said, okay, so what are you going to do? So walk us through the launch plan. What are you guys going to do? I was like, we'll make a tweet. I was thinking, okay, we'll see how the tweet does. I mean, not to be disparaging, but my 10-year-old, he gets more views on his YouTube videos, and these tweets, and he's only 10. So, he's also really good at social media. That's a different story. I swear my kid's going to be like Jake Paul or something when he's older, or Mr. Beast. He's just wired for it. And other stuff I've been thinking of too is, the nature of a book right now is going to be changing. Like, Amazon instituted the 3-book a day limit. The 3-book policy. Yeah, which is nuts. And the implications of that are pretty big, right? So for the audience, I mean, everyone here has used ChatGPT at this point, and you have AI-generated books. That's going to change the landscape of stuff. And so the stuff I've been thinking of right now is like the book I'm working on. Early release chapters are going to actually be released on Substack, for example, right? Because then, to your point, you own the audience. And I think it's about, not just writing the book, but it's about building a community around the idea early and often. And by community, I mean, people who are rabid fans of the idea, maybe not you, but the idea, and then that gives them a chance to talk and collaborate. Because the other thing I notice is there's a lot of book clubs. I don't know if you have book clubs in your book. There's tons on mine, and I'm like, okay, so why not just bring people to the book club with the book and the author? Like, why not just have all this organically there right now? And so that's something I've been thinking about, is just sort of the nature of like, what does a book look like in 2024? Because I mean, the reality is, you saw over the last year something as fundamentally changing as probably the printing press, right? The ability to generate whatever you want in this means you have to start providing a moat around, the author and the idea that you have in the book. A book on its own, I think nowadays is like, that's great, but it won't stand on its own as much. We mentioned discoverability, and it's like, go to Amazon now and try and look for books. Now multiply that by 3 books a day on an extreme. That's what, 1,095 books a year that somebody's doing. And it's the curation and discoverability on that platform, I think, is going to be very challenging.
Yeah, the 3 books a day thing is kind of... So I have 2 takes on it. One is that you can look at the cynical side that like Amazon's like, we want to make money, and so who can write legitimately 3 books a day, right? Well, I mean there are other books that you can write. I mean, people are doing like coloring page books and those sorts of things, and maybe they have some program that's helping them do that or something like that, right? So that, I mean, not too much different from AI, and people have actually been doing those sorts of things since Amazon sort of opened the floodgates back in like 2011. People have been like experimenting. You can go on YouTube and you can see like, here's the niche books that you can write that are making money on YouTube that aren't technical, but it's just like, because again, there's a search engine connected to people's credit cards, you can do that. So yes, Amazon's like, yeah, we'll make money from people selling books, and we'll try and do some sort of limit. I mean, Amazon does ask now, did you use AI to make your book? That's one of the questions when you create a book now. Like my last Python book, that was one of the things that they ask. But again, I think, does a book look different? It does and it doesn't, right? Mm-hmm. You do have to have your platform, and like this like gaming of Amazon has actually been going on since Kindles have come out. And this notion of like, chat or whatever generative AI can create stuff for us. There's already too much information out there. Even before chat, there's too much information. So I'm not super concerned with that, so to speak. I think you're right. Like you want to build your moat, and you're doing things super intelligently. So for you, it's not a problem. I think for someone else, I think for sort of your make a quick buck person who's like, I've got chat, and I see that like Joe's written a book that's successful. I want to write a book, and so I'm just gonna, spend 3 nights, saying write a chapter on this, write a chapter on this, write a chapter on this, and then put it on Amazon, and things will magically, like, I'll magically get money. You're not gonna. Your return on investment on that is going to be very minimal.
You're better off being an Uber driver.
Because you're not going to push anyone there, and no one's going to find your book.
That's just it. I mean, you and I can sell books because we have an audience, right? And I think that's like the key ingredient right now. There are definitely exceptions to that, but for the most part, especially in technical publishing, if you look at certain publishers, like the one I'm pointing at over here, it's like they just crank out books. I mean, that one's a book mill, right? And the number of authors I know who are successful on that are absolutely like maybe one. Mm-hmm. But the model for that company is just crank out as many books as possible. They came to me asking me and Matt, like, would you like to write a book? And we're like, well, what does that look like? And they said, well, you find a popular book and then copy it and then change it a bit. And we're like, we're not a cover band. This isn't like what we do, dude.
We're not a cover band. I like it.
Yeah. So that was a hard no. But it's just, so also I think for the audience, like when you talk to a publisher, you got to understand like what game are they playing too, right? Like the imprint that I'm creating, it's going to be like hardcore data books for hardcore data people by hardcore data people. Like we know the subject matter, we know the audience because we are the audience, right? Like that's, and it's going to be very hard to get in. Whereas other publishers will take anybody under the sun, and they're trying to just spray and pray. And others, like O'Reilly, I consider to be the preeminent publisher out there, and they're very picky about who they take on, and it's a high bar to get through. And I have a ton of respect for what they do. For me, it's like I just want to have more control over the process and make more money, just like you do. I mean, we both publish for O'Reilly, but we have got a lot of respect for them. But at the same time, it's like business is business. So
yeah, and I so in my authoring course, one of the folks that I interview did basically exactly what you're suggesting, but I would say for the website, right? So things like React, Angular,
sick.
And they built up a platform, and books were doing 6 figures, right?
Damn.
And good 6 figures.
Like each book?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So definitely possible, right? When you own the platform and you know your audience, and your audience is like, hey, I liked what they did here. Let's get the next content that they're sticking out. So definitely possible to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And and there's other things you can do too. Like I think like Nick, he's got a whole kind of tutorial platform that he's built as well. So he puts people on that, and it's just, there's a lot of ways you can monetize. It's not just about a book, right? Like you do courses, you do trainings, and the book is a great calling card, but there's only one revenue stream of a few. And that's how you got to look at this too. If you're going to be doing content and publishing, I mean, a book is a ton of work to do, right? Yeah. I think it's rewarding. You get to know your subject matter better than any other way. But also consider branching that off into other stuff like courses, workshops, however you want to do it. I mean, you seem to have found a model that works for you, Matt. So it's like, it's obviously working. You're able to make a living off it. So
definitely. And again, not everyone wants to do that, right? Not everyone wants to be a content creator or pushing stuff. Some people just want to write books. But yeah, definitely. If you're someone who's thinking about, maybe I want to take this and start it off as like a side hustle and then maybe move it into something else. Certainly this can be an awesome business card, right? To make your name known. And you can probably attest to that as well, right? Where it's like, instead of like, here's my LinkedIn, I can say, oh, here's my book, right? I can send you a book and kind of show you
night and day difference. I mean, I don't think you have any trouble right now, showing the credibility you have in the Python education space. It's like, you are the person, you have the books to do that. And like for my company, Turner, we're not doing as much consulting as we used to, but we still get inbound every single day. And the book is the best calling card there is, because people will read the book, they'll give us a call if they have any problems we want us to help them out with, and it's just it smooths the process so much in terms of visibility and running a business in a way that I don't know that you could replicate elsewhere. It's hard to do.
So I would say like that's another thing that maybe we haven't emphasized as much, but like for folks who are maybe like, I'm thinking about a side hustle, I have topics that I'm interested in, right? Or I want to be known for this, or I want to build a platform around this. I think doing a book is probably one of the best things you can do to like build that brand.
Absolutely. Well, cool. It's good having you over, man. Great chat. Learned a ton. Hopefully the audience learned something new. But go write a book. It's just that easy. But I think it's a rewarding process, though. Because there's no better way to master your subject matter than to have to think and write about it, unless you use ChatGPT, in which case,
Well, in that case, you need to be an expert, because you need to fix the hallucinations.
Oh yeah, and there will be some. So, for people who want to learn more about what you're up to, how can they do that?
Yeah, so if you go to metasnake.com, at the bottom there's a mailing list. You can sign up for that if you want information on sort of the latest and greatest. I'm also on social media, so Twitter, Dunder M Harrison _ M Harrison _
Clever.
And I'm on LinkedIn as well. So
nice.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime, dude. Anytime.
Awesome.